So how are you guys feeling about the semester so far? Other classes?
Yeah, I have easy classes.
That's good.
Except for class, and that's my but it's not too hard. It's research methods with psychology.
Oh yeah. Is that for psychology majors?
Yeah.
Okay. I think social work majors take it too.
Yeah, my friend, she's taking a research methods for social work, and they have one for criminal justice majors too.
So what year do you take it? Like
You wait. It's your senior year. You have to have two. What is it? Intro to psych. It's like pre classes that you take before.
in
So
stats, I guess.
Yeah,
sometimes.
you gotta take stats before.
Okay. Right. Wow. So then you'll graduate in the next 2 years.
No, I graduated.
Okay. That's fun. That's exciting.
Yeah.
Any graduate school thoughts or no?
Right now, I don't know. But if I'm leaning, well, I haven't decided yet. But I'm leaning towards Wright State.
Oh yeah. For grad psychology or for grad
psychology.
Okay. Yep. I graduated in 2000. I finished my social work. And then in 2001, I finished my theology. I added a second major on. So then by August, I had somehow applied to graduate schools. They make you start applying early, like about winter break. And I started, and it was like a good 3 years. I don't know. Are your all's programs 3 years?
Right now we have it to where we can do like a 2-year program and get our master's.
Okay. Like 30 or 60 hours or something like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So I might do that, but I haven't decided yet. Still thinking about programs.
Right. Yeah. It can be, I forget who talked me into it. I really didn't want to go on for any more school, but I kind of noticed the job market had helped to get those additional degrees.
Yeah, that's what I heard. You have to get like at least to even apply for license, you have to go.
Yeah.
Your master's.
Yeah. And there is a license, hello, for social work and psychology majors that is available after you've taken 60 credit hours of college, and that's called the CDCA, or Chemical Dependency Counselor Assistantship. And that seems like a good one because you can do it right now. If you're like a junior or a senior, you can do it right now. It's something, I might even have, let me see if I have it here for you guys. There are good paying jobs for this. So yes, in Dropbox, I saved, pretty sure I just called it CDCA. So it stands for Chemical Dependency Counselor Assistantship. And I don't know if it'll work today. Gosh. It's hard to keep so many documents together. But I know that I have them somewhere. Let's see here. Actually, if you just search CDCA, you'll find it. I just have the document where I had answered all the questions with one of my friends.
You said CDCA?
Uh-huh. And that stands for, I'll do in Ohio. Are you out of Ohio?
No, I'm in Ohio.
Okay. So, it wants me to use Edge. So CDCA in Ohio. So here's how you would get it. There's a lot of people that.
I think I see C. It says OCDP.ohio.gov, but then it says Chemical Dependency Counselor Assistant.
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
So a lot of your training in psychology, you guys would have some of that, just like we get it in social work, and it's a good. I mean, it's a good paying job. It's working at chemical dependency counselor assistantship rehab area. So, all right, we have a disturbing video today, so I guess I should warn you guys first. But we'll start with the social justice chapter 6. We're already in week 6 somehow. And for some reason, this is the week we decide to socially distance. So you got to be able to reach both of your arms out and not touch anybody. I don't know if we would fit everybody in the room. Is there like any outbreaks going on? Is that why they're doing this? Or are they just doing it because they're bored?
Yeah, I heard it's a lot of outbreaks.
Oh.
And it's like they come and get people in the vans, like the white vans. You just see a lot of them.
Like they just like drive off with them?
Yeah, they pick them up, have them get their stuff, and then they take them to the location.
Oh, do they have enough locations to put them in?
I think they're going to hotels. Because my suite mate, she was exposed. So they took her to the hotel.
Okay. Huh. And then the vaccine's supposed to stop all this, right? Like you shouldn't get COVID if you're vaccinated, you should be okay, or I don't know. You hope not. Well, so anybody know what's going on at the Haitian border, or the border on Texas with Haitian immigrants? It's kind of the newest thing in the news. So this kind of runs along the line of our chapter in social justice. So with social justice, as social workers, we believe a just society accords every societal member the same basic rights, the same basic opportunities, and then the same benefits. And then the social worker's role is that we work for a just society. So here's what's going on at the border. So there's a lot of camps right now at the border. We were watching like tent cities last week, and here's some of the border.
Give me 90 seconds, and I'll reveal why you should be buying silver and how to get started. Tell me, are you saving?
I'm going to turn now to immigration, because today the Biden administration said it plans to admit up to 125,000 refugees in the next year. That's actually more than 8 times the ceiling set by former President Trump. At the same time, deportations are being set up for nearly 15,000 migrants, mostly Haitian, who are kidnapped over the bridge on the Texas border. CBS Rebel Marcus is following the crisis in Del Rio, Texas.
Tonight, a sea of humanity and desperation along the Texas-Mexican border that has overwhelmed the U.S. Border Patrol. A number of agents on horseback can be seen trying to keep migrants from crossing into the country, while threatening them with what appears to be horses' reins or ropes, including families like this one holding a baby when the agents get dangerously close. As they try to pass, the agents said to them. A massive show of force by Texas troopers creating a barricade along the border to stop the thousands of mainly Haitian migrants from arriving in Del Rio, Texas. The Department of Homeland Security is executing what could be one of the largest mass deportations in decades to remove the remaining of the nearly 15,000 migrants at the camp. Today, Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas warned those coming illegally will be returned.
But this is not the way to come to the United States. Trying to enter the United States illegally is not worth the tragedy, the money, or the effort.
Some who qualify for asylum have been allowed in, like Walter Besson, who fled Haiti's crime and poverty 3 years ago and trekked here from Chile. He says he left because there's no security in Haiti and is looking for a better life. But as the administration tries to crack down on illegal crossings, Mexican officials tell CBS News migrants are looking for other routes to enter the country as an alternative to being deported back to Haiti. Alex Rossier is a 36-year-old Haitian migrant. I don't want to be deported. If I'm deported now, I'll die in Haiti. Why? Because there's no security in Haiti. 600 additional federal agents have been sent to this stretch of the border as the U.S. increases the number of deportation flights to Haiti. There is some concern that migrants may attempt more dangerous crossings. One recently drowned along a wider section of the Rio Grande. Nora?
Randy Bojorquez, thank you so much.
So as we finish up our last paper over the weekend and get into the code of ethics, and then the next paper is on the International Federation of Social Workers. Here's some of the stuff that comes up with social work and social justice, how we promote social justice as social workers. One of the values you all wrote about was human rights. These are rights that are inherent by virtue of being human. So as social workers, we believe we will protect life, we will ensure freedom, and we will help folks secure personal liberty. So those are some of the things that you'll see in the code. Some other human rights, the categories of human rights, you have both civil and political rights, social and economic rights, and then the collective rights. And these are, as social workers, what we help folks to get to. As social workers and folks working in helping professions, we believe in the right to social welfare. So that would be economic and social and cultural rights, that everyone has the right to work. You know, if we're able-bodied, we're able to do something, that we should find ways to, you know, if it's as simple as growing food for ourselves and cutting enough firewood to keep warm through the winter, or if it's as complicated as putting together, piecework on Ford cars, transmissions, trucks. We also believe in the right to standard of living that supports adequate health care and well-being, which a lot of us got in 2011 with the passage of the Affordable Care Act, and then the right to education. So I know that most of us only get education guaranteed until we're about 18. Sometimes, if you are able to become part of the foster system, you could have education paid for until you're 21 with an IEP. They are kind of working on some federal laws to make sure everyone gets the right to at least a 2-year college education. It's kind of pushing more towards a 4-year education. So here's some of the isms and social injustice that you'll see. The first being racism, then elitism, sexism, heterosexism, and then ageism and handicapism. And they'll be defined on the next slide. But do any of those stand out to you guys, or anyone in here that you have not heard of before?
What is
Handicapism? So that's what I was going to show a video on next. Actually, in your class, we watched something similar in human behavior in the social environment. But up until like the 60s and 70s, we believed anyone who had like a handicap, and this could include like cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, several, like we institutionalized them. We put them into, and some countries still do that, where they say that they'll have a better life if mom and dad don't have to stress with the kid who has a handicap. Then in the 70s, things changed. We had what was called De-Institutionalism. Here's the definition of handicapism. So it's prejudice against people who have a mental or physical disability. And that's a pretty common one. Even nowadays, you'll still see it somehow, still showing up in like the butt of all jokes, or somebody, I even grew up with dyslexia, and people still make jokes about that. I can roll with it. Like, I'm okay with it. I am dyslexic. I have a hard time reading and writing, and I didn't let that stop me. You know what I mean? Like, I just kept pushing forward and took advantage of. In 1990, we had passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that gave us, adequate time to get through testing and turn things in. So the ADA also made it where you see we have handicap entrances on every door, every building, everywhere around, and they give us space to be able to access buildings. Racism the first one here, an ideology that perpetuates the social domination of one racial group by another. Elitism, that was another one in the morning class nobody had heard of, and it is a weird word, but it's basically prejudice against those in lower economic classes. That's a very common one also in the United States. We have sexism, which is the belief that one sex is superior to the other. Heterosexism is prejudice against people whose sexual orientation differs from that of heterosexuals. And then ageism, the belief that one age group is inferior to another. So I actually wanted to show the ageism video also, but I'm going to start with the video about folks in Willowbrook. So this was an institution in New York until the mid-1960s. That finally, because a gentleman named Geraldo Rivera broke into it and filmed, got these images out on public screens that weren't seen before. And just the condition that these folks were kept in. It was kind of like they thought that they could do the Ford Motor Company. Have you guys ever seen like what do they call that? That line that everybody works on? Like, I'm blanking on what the name of it is. But they thought they could do that type of care to the handicapped. So here's the...
The year of 1972. The sounds, patients inside Willowbrook State School. It was supposed to be a place to help children and adults with developmental disabilities. Instead, the city's most vulnerable were neglected, abused, and worse.
At nighttime, being raped and just routinely.
I get to well,
At the age of 3, Bernard Carabella entered Willowbrook, grossly and offensively misdiagnosed with what was then called mental retardation.
Parents would be told that they would be happier if they were with people like themselves.
Did you ever think about this 37 years ago?
you know, when I was in war, I go to the tide.
Bernard sat down with me inside his apartment. He never had an intellectual disability. What he has is cerebral palsy.
My man used to get out cookies and candy. They used to throw it on the floor. And as I got older, I began to realize this is not normal.
Now at 67 years old, Bernard is an advocate for people with disabilities.
There are 5,300 patients at Willowbrook.
Dr. Michael Wilkins worked at Willowbrook for almost 2 years and is forever haunted by what took place there.
The main aspect of Willowbrook was that it was a penal colony, not a school.
In 1965, Robert F. Kennedy toured Willowbrook. What he found was shocking.
I visited the State Institution for the Mentally Retarded, and I think particularly at Willowbrook that we have a situation that borders on a snake pit.
Despite his call for change, nothing changed. In fact, it got worse. Overcrowded, understaffed, underfunded. Willowbrook initially lost 600 employees when New York State struggled financially. In 1971, the state slashed the budget a second time.
There were 3 minutes that were allowed for the staff to feed each other. There were big spoons and mush, and they would hold their head up like a baby bird.
This went on for 7 years. Enter Geraldo Rivera, who got cameras inside the institution, exposing what was really going on inside this state school.
So I had this stolen from me, and I opened the door, and the first thing you are hit by the smell. The smell hits you even before the sound. And it's like, oh, what is that? It smells of disease and death. What is that?
Geraldo went back, this time on an authorized tour.
While unannounced, we found the children naked and basically unattended. They were shown kids who were fully clothed and generously attended.
A dog and pony show also presented to Alan Goldstein, whose brother Fred is a survivor of Willowbrook.
They cleaned everyone up. The hallways were shiny. They smelled of urine. I couldn't figure that out.
Not even their charade could conceal what was behind closed doors.
One child who was this tall would see us and she'd yell out, "Daddy! Daddy! Daddy!" And then there were 6 of them. And then there were 12 of them. And then there were 30 of them.
Geraldo went back to Willowbrook again without permission.
It was the first day all over again.
Is there one thing that takes you back that will never leave you?
Will always be haunted by one particularly poignant image of a young man, pants were down around his ankles in the bathroom, and he was under the sink. That's right.
His documentary catapulted Willowbrook into the national spotlight. In 1975, the state signed a consent decree starting the largest effort to deinstitutionalize people with developmental disabilities. Willowbrook was finally closed down in 1987, 15 years of secrets.
It's something that is so harrowing, so horrifying, that even from the, I just can't get over it.
So with deinstitutionalization, some of the stuff that has come from it has been good. So starting with the definition, handicapism is prejudice against people who have mental or physical disabilities. And some of the spaces that now hire a lot of social workers, folks with psychology degrees, and people with sociology degrees is LAD, so Living Assistance for Developmentally Delayed. So they've deinstitutionalized to where instead of having folks in these huge institutions where they're kind of doing care where they just have like big pots of gruel cooking, they'd feed them and they'd keep them barely alive, to kind of this space where in 1975 they started LAD, where they're empowering adults. And here's some of the stuff that LAD does that I was able to find. And they hire a lot of social workers. You guys even hear some hiring without a 4-year degree. They'll hire with a 2-year degree or try to get folks into independent housing. So some of them have different houses that are going up around Cincinnati and Dayton.
Unbelievable. I love it.
Oh, Jen. How are you?
I really like this house because, well, it's big and a lot of room. We can play like cornhole in the back or in the front, like and some friends, like toss the football, the basketball, or I think it's awesome. It's exciting.
How do we take technology and virtual remote support, combine those to develop a package that really is accessible, it can be affordable. The 4 guys that live here, it's going to drastically change their lives, but then the 400 that are going to come after them, that we can take what we learn here and really increase people's independence by just learning and growing and changing the way we actually provide the service.
So in the first video compared to the second one, do you guys notice a difference in the style of care? And it really comes down to when you are a huge institution, and the same goes for some large state schools. Like in social work, we demand that you have only 1 teacher for 25 students. There's some colleges and universities that they kind of like mass produce programs where you have 125 students in this big lecture hall and a teacher that kind of tries to answer questions with a TA or a teaching assistant. With folks that had disabilities, they mentioned New York had budget cuts and they got down to where there was 1 or 2 people working with like 100 people to feed and bathe and take care of. Now with agencies like Living Assistance for the Developmentally Delayed, hiring social workers, this is kind of the quality of care we're going towards, and definitely a job space for a lot of social workers. Let's see if I can get that going.
For us to provide for the situation like this. And, the cost, the expense, the right supports, the right environment. We didn't imagine that was gonna happen for so long, or if it could have happened at all.
I think it will be great because I will get to know the guys that I'm working with and be able to be back in my home community. It was unbelievable.
There are no words. Took a step into a future that you never imagined was possible. And it's indescribable. It's phenomenal, from toothbrushes all the way to smart refrigerators. And I know I'm not a lot for words, but there are no words to describe what we see and how great we are for that.
23 years ago, we never knew this was even going to be possible.
What we're looking at is a house. It's so much more.
I feel like it's just giving him a chance to be Jim and go as far as he can. And I'm very excited, very grateful. Very grateful.
I don't know the words to say. It's just, I find it cool.
So actually, a friend of mine who is now director at LAD, this is why I'm familiar with most of their stuff. She started in 97. Actually, she lived in the same house I did in Nicaragua in like 1996. So I know this is many years ago. What is that, like 35, 25 years ago? And she came home and started working at the Coalition for the Homeless in Cincinnati. And we have a large international coalition for the homeless. And she's more recently moved on to do work with LAD, and she'll do fundraisers and things. We run the Flying Pig Marathon together with folks, or get them into gardening and horticulture therapy, and then different exercise things. So that quality of care dynamic changing over from kind of the handicapism, which some folks still do experience. That's one of the most made fun of, partly why they passed the Americans with Disabilities Act in 1990. But that's one of the spaces that we've seen a lot of growth and development. So any thoughts or feelings or ideas about that? Anybody have folks in their family or friends that have cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, autism even? So a lot of folks have autistic diagnosis. And that used to be about only 1 in every 100 persons became autistic after birth, was diagnosed autistic. Now it's down to like 1 in 55 is diagnosed with autism. So it's kind of a growing trend. So there's a few theories about the basis of social injustice. One is about social Darwinism. People would say, well, only those who are smart and strong should succeed, and that's the old theory. Then there's also the sociological theories of structural functionalism and conflict. This one's unique because this one's a little harder. All right, my dyslexia will come out in my spelling all the time. So luckily Google corrects us. This one's tough because like when you see ageism, how do you guys think you could be have a prejudice against somebody of a different age? Or yeah.
Mostly it is about children, when adults don't think that they can choose something, or they just don't have the right to have the opinion. Or sometimes for elderly people, because some people think that in that age they're tolerant and they can't make decisions. Mostly these two parts of society.
Definitely. Yeah, so you guys have seen videos, the first one with, if you remember, the 13th Amendment.
It's a great example. He's very young, he's an activist, and nobody takes it seriously.
So you're saying on the younger end of things too. Okay. And then, so you see it on both sides. Sometimes when you're getting hired in at a job, they might feel like you're too young, you don't have enough experience. That's against the law, actually. They can't say that. Or they might be like, you're too old, you're going to retire soon, you got gray hairs. So they won't say it, but they still can think that and act how they want with it. Another one that comes up a lot is some of the stuff when we have elder care and how folks are struggling. Often they are taken advantage of financially. Sometimes a person could have a grandparent who dies, but they're getting the Social Security check, so they don't report that for a while. That's weird because you've got grandma upstairs or something. So like that's some of the stuff that comes up, along with like if they're getting a check regularly, they may say they're going to take care of grandma, but they take care of them in conditions kind of like we saw right there. So I want to make sure I have the right video on. We need our advertisement, so don't forget to shop at what's this place? Yeah, don't forget to buy your stuff at Old. I don't know if they even have good stuff, right?
A common misconception about ageism is that it's only a problem that affects older people. And indeed, we do live in a society that is obsessed by youth. Open any magazine, look at any billboard, watch any TV show.
Everybody's going to age. It is this one place that we all have something in common. Policies that are good for families should be good for people of all ages. We should be thinking of ways to have government policies that are supportive of older people, supportive of kids, supportive of people in the middle.
When an employer sees my resume or my LinkedIn profile, they see that I have 20 or more years of experience, I think that's a signal of, oh, he's too old to work for us. And I am struggling financially, and I'm really scared. I'm really scared. I've been struggling to find work for a couple years now. When I eliminate all the other options, it seems like one of the big things is because I'm over 50. It's just sort of some impressions and vibes, and that's really, it's so ephemeral, I can't really pin that down. I mean, I've had some really great phone interviews, and it's fast and snappy and terrific and amazing, and then I walk in the door, and there seems to be a mood shift. My partner has a great job, but he can't support his family, especially not in New York. We can't kind of sustain this rent without me also working. I've had some really bad bouts of depression. I think the night before, okay, tomorrow is the day. I'm going to get up at 6, and I'm going to job hunt from 6 in the morning until 7 at night. I'm not going to take breaks. I'm just going to power through, and it's the numbers game. And then you wake up. I don't know where to go today. Then that stuff starts to drip in, right? I'm useless, nobody needs me, I'm worn out, oh my God, I'm 53. How could I not have any more usefulness left in me? I have a great concern of, I'm not going to be homeless, and that's scary to even vocalize. But that's my real fear.
So basically, even though it's illegal to discriminate against somebody over 40, you don't want to hire them as they're too old and they might retire, be slow. It's really hard to prove it. It's hard to say like, well, they, fired me because the younger employee was less expensive or it was easier to pay them.
We've had a lifetime to internalize these messages, and most of us it's never even occurred to us to challenge them. For example, I stopped blaming my sore knee on being 65 because my other knee doesn't hurt and it's just as old. We all are bombarded with negative messages about aging from childhood on. We are all prejudiced. Anytime you look at a young person in a job and you resent the fact that they're your manager simply because they're younger than you, for example, that's ageism. So I'm really an advocate for telling both sides of the story. I'm not a Pollyanna that says everything about aging is easy and it's all going to be great. But let's also acknowledge all the ways in which it enriches us.
Social Security. It started with a bill passed by Congress in 1935, and it became law a few days later when the bill was signed by the President of the United States.
When Social Security was created in the 1930s, we arbitrarily came up with this idea that 65 was old. And we've never adjusted it in all of those years. And life has changed a lot.
This Social Security measure gives at least some protection.
So this was the president in the 1930s when the bill came, but basically it's the money that we pay into. You guys pay into it right now. Sometimes you don't notice it because it's only like 10%, but if you see on your paycheck you made 500 but you only get 400 something, it's because you pay 10% Social Security tax. To get it, you have to pay 10 years or 40 quarters of a year. They usually measure that, and then that determines your payout. Like my mom just started getting hers. She is, the latest you can get it is like 72 and you get more money. The earliest you can get, I think, is 62, and you can get like a third or like a certain percentage. The average age is like 65, and this is the president. Back then, I think they hid that he was handicapped because he was in a wheelchair, but they thought the country would maybe think he was not powerful as he was riding around in a wheelchair too.
To 30 millions of our citizens who will reap direct benefits through unemployment compensation, through old age pensions.
We all know that we're living longer, we're living healthier lives, yet we're kind of stuck in this notion of what old is.
Kind of toggle back and forth between these ties. It really depends, I think, on my perception of the mood and the emotion of the company. When I'm preparing for an interview, I really am always mindful of my hair and my beard. I've gone to interviews where I, literally agonize for hours, and that's, of course, incredibly frustrating. A couple of years ago, there was a young lady in maybe her mid-20s. She said, "Well, my friends can't find jobs. They just need to give us their jobs. They just need to stop working. They need to stop working." And it kind of made me kind of scared. And then I kind of looked at her in a different way because I thought, oh, she's not on my side. She's my opponent.
Zero-sum game approach just gets us into a lot of trouble. Advocating for older people does not mean forgetting about younger people. So it's really important that we start thinking about how do we lift everybody's vote and how do we not think of it as a competition for resources. We created a one-year fellowship that's an organized way to bring kind of a new source of talent into often very resource-starved nonprofits. It's having really good results.
So this is what a social worker would do with someone who's experiencing ageism. But one of the interventions that they do, like getting you back into the workforce and practicing for work still. Now you see folks that are at Walmart, sometimes they say they're just a greeter at like 65, 70. And the hard part is that it does come back to the value of our dollar, like what you can buy with the dollar. If we make $7.50 an hour or $15 an hour, depending on the state where you live in, it may be easy to get by or hard to get by due to inflation. And at 65, most people had acquired either enough savings that they could live off Social Security, but that hasn't been the case in the past 10 years. So people are having a harder time And I feel like my generation will be the same. We'll be one of the generations that likely we work until we die. You know, there's not going to be a huge retirement coming up because of the debt load we carry with us in student loans. So there's a balance between finding that mindfulness of savings and debt load that you carry throughout life.
The idea is not to elevate the status of older people to be higher or better. It is to try and figure out a way to live together where the difference between old and young, which is real, is respected, where we capitalize on certain things, you know, that younger people possess physical energy more of, and that older people possess experience, and build on each other's strengths, of course.
So what I do here every day, I sit at this computer and I write endless letters, cover letters, emails, short notes. I'm reaching out to acquaintances, friends, people I don't know, trying to be confident and upbeat. But it's not really easy, and I'm really struggling really hard. I'm healthy and I'm alive and I'm smart and I can think and I can work. Just, you know.
So this guy may experience both heterosexism and ageism. So sometimes you can have the experience of both things at once. Any question on the ageism? One last one is elder abuse. I'm sure you guys have seen like videos in public a lot of times that they show, but sometimes it's physical abuse, and then sometimes it is just property and values. Like they're stealing a check. With the opioid epidemic in especially the Midwest, we often do find folks that may take a check and say they'll take care of grandma and grandpa, but they're using 1,000 of the 1,200 a month to buy pain pills or something else, and then feeding grandma and grandpa off that $199 a month. And that's where some of the challenge comes in. Sometimes you see just like legit physical violence. That's what this one shows, where somebody just beats the crap out of an older person, and maybe they were mouthing off to them, but at the same time, they usually should not expect that. Like the worker might need to walk away. You see the old man kind of swatting at him, but pretty sure he beats the crap out of him and it gets in trouble for it. So I guess they use this one as evidence in one of the legal cases, and some of the old days, maybe this one have gone over, but nowadays, and I look, because it seems that there's like a camera in every room, you know what I mean? So it's like, keep in mind with employers, everything that we do, every email, every text message, things of that nature, is kind of monitored. Kind of finishing up here though. So again, the basis of social injustice, there's the psychological theories. We also have sometimes victim blaming and just world beliefs. So some of the effects of social injustice, you see the oppression through discrimination, dehumanization, and then victimization. So going back to the border crisis, though, this is a tough one because some of you may have seen a bit of the footage and maybe others haven't. But if you were able to be president for one day, how would you handle that border situation? What's that? For one day? So there's 12,000 camped out on the border right here. And it's definitely something that we're going to be hearing about it for like 30 to 60 days, and this is leading us into our next paper topic of the International Federation of Social Workers. I've done a lot of work with asylum status refugees. That usually means you had a civil war in your country or a crisis, a hurricane, earthquake, which happened in Haiti. And you saw the first video I showed on Haiti that you were able to get asylum status, but that can take a while. So most folks have come over from, anybody here ever seen Haiti or heard of Haiti or been to Haiti? What's that? Right, because it's not very far. So like if we were to, they say it's only 90 miles to like Miami from Cuba. So that's 90 miles. So Haiti might only be like 25 to Cuba. And that might mean that a lot of folks were able to get a boat or even a plane to Jamaica or Cuba. And then most folks come up through Guatemala. I once took a bus from here and drove all the way down. I wouldn't recommend it nowadays. It's actually supposed to be dangerous. I went to Guatemala, Honduras, Salvador, and then Nicaragua, and then took a bus back. And it took 4 days on bus. So that's longer than the United States is pretty much. And they're coming either plane, boat, or swimming here. If they're, that would be like a marathon of swimming, but then walking up in caravans. And this is where kind of our Border Patrol has them now. And they don't know what to do. You know what I mean? Like, it's a tough, there's no right answer to it. Like, there's no, obviously providing food and housing would be the humanitarian thing to do. I don't know how you house 11,000 people, because that would be like an entire stadium's full. I don't know how many our stadium fits, but it would probably be like 3 or 4 of our stadiums filled up. How do you get food for enough people? We certainly have enough land to grow that. And how folks have come up through the border has been shocking. I've been here before in this, so this indicates desert. Like all of that is definitely a desert. And it's about 110 degrees there right now. So the closer you get to the Gulf, the more land, growing areas and green space you have. But then the further you get, this is like out west, it's a lot of desert. So it's really hard to make it through there. So that's going to be, some of the work that social workers will do with the International Federation of Social Workers. And that's going to be the next paper I did put up. It should be in there for you. I just wanted to check if you guys had any questions on the last one due over the weekend or now this one. So I tried to push it out as far as I could. It is due in October, so you can kind of say it's due next month. The other bad news is I think October is Friday and 11 days from now, like 12 days. So in the Global Social Work paper, students investigate the International Federation of Social Worker. Again, you can do a search on the IFSW and the NASW, which you've already done. So comparing like the international jobs and then local jobs or whatever state you're from. So you don't have to do Ohio. If you're from Chicago or Illinois or Indiana or Michigan, look at the jobs you have there and then look at the International Federation of Social Workers. Some folks start out in the Peace Corps first. So then write a research paper on these. It should include a description of the organization as well as the purpose and mission, which you can get on their website. Papers should include a variety of human rights issues being addressed by the organization. So we just talked about a big one now is immigration. That's not just the US. I know a lot of European countries have it, like France and Germany let in 1 million refugees. I don't know if Russia lets in refugees or not. Do you know? So different countries allow different amounts depending on their resources, and often the U.S. has tended to take the most amount for a long time.
Different refugees. We don't have refugees from what countries? Just like
everyone you can name, I think.
And in our country, it is like Middle Asia,
Mhm.
so Kazakhstan and all the countries like this.
Right, like Nepal and Bhutan and
And usually they're searching for work, not to live in Russia. No,
Right.
they really want to live there.
Yeah.
But there is even less work in home countries, so they
Mhm.
have to.
Right. And so this is a international crisis, and you will see a lot of international jobs with it. Do internet search on social work job opportunities in the U.S. So locally, Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, and then internationally. So like, anybody here want to work internationally by chance? Like, yeah. Well, there's a job for 100,000 in Iraq. You could be a social worker in Iraq for $100,000. That's like the best paying job I've seen in a while.
Maybe you want to work there really a lot of time. But,
So that's the fear, is that I guess you're on a military base, but people would be afraid they'd get either shot at or a bomb would go off. But you get 100,000 tax free, I think, because you're working out of the country. You don't pay taxes, which is nice. There's other. My dad did the Peace Corps in 1968 in Samoa, Samoan Islands. So you can look up the Peace Corps and things you can do. There's also the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. And then, yeah, this one got up to 4 to 5 pages now in APA. So any questions about anything? I know it's so rainy, it's like, it seems humid today. Yeah.
the second part,
So like searching local jobs, if you wanted to work for Living Assistance for Developmentally Delayed, LADD, Veterans Association would be a local one. The international jobs would be other international social work jobs. And finding a posting and see maybe it's the job in Iraq or Afghanistan right now, helping resettle refugees and whatnot.
So I'm talking about the job in Harlem here,
Correct. Yep.
and then compare it to like human resources issues.
So comparing it to a international job or a local job, like searching the local job listings and searching the international job listings and showing what they would be, and then say which one you would want to work in, if that answers the question. And then indicate if in the paper if any of the international positions interest you. Like if, I guess it would be cool to be a social worker in Hawaii, but that's not really international. Maybe for you it is, but not for any of us that are from America. Or Alaska, or like Canada is international, even though it's only 4 hours away. Can work in Canada. And that's it. That's all we got for today. I like how they spaced us out. If you can reach out and touch anybody on your left or right side, then you might get the COVID. They put all the desks out there. I guess so, which is weird because it's not many, luckily we do have a film of it. So, yeah. Hopefully COVID dies off and we don't ever have it again by the end of the semester. You just don't know. Well, cool. Then see you guys on Thursday.